Hello class. Please, if you have not watched the first video and lecture over how the role of the shark in Jaws is an antagonist to 4 of the major characters in the film, that will help you understand and write critical review number 2. This PowerPoint focuses solely on sort of more technical writing tips and provides an outline of sort of what I would like you to put in the paper as you discuss it. So just a reminder, critical review number 2, critical review number 2 runs on the same structure as the first paper. So it's 500 to 750 words. You'll do MLA format for spacing. Attached in the PowerPoint is a link to find this on Word and a link to how to do this through Google Docs if you write that way. Remember that you must have one thesis statement. You should use 2 uses of evidence from the film, and you should spend some time making sure that your paper is clean and readable. There, attached to this PowerPoint are some tips to help you revise your paper before turning it in. So let's look at the overall structure. Like any paper, your paper should have an intro, a body, and a conclusion. In the introduction, you should present the director. You should name the 2 actors and characters you have chosen to analyze, and a brief summary of the plot of Jaws. Then you should have your thesis statement. In the body paragraph, you should have at least 2 body paragraphs. You should have a topic sentence. You should use evidence and provide explanation. Finally, your conclusion should have your opinion about if you feel that the shark in the film is a true antagonist, or do you believe that the shark is something different? That maybe the antagonist is something different in the film or a different person in the film. The conclusion is the only part of the paper that you should use the word I and have your opinion. Finally, always make sure you have a works cited page, even though we are analyzing only one film. Please make sure to cite it correctly. I've provided you a correct citation to the film here in this PowerPoint right here. Introduction and thesis statement. So, your introduction should have 2 key parts. First part, you should summarize the basic plot of the film, talk about the 2 characters you're going to analyze in the film, and make sure you mention which actors are playing those characters. That information about the actors who are playing those characters can be found in the previous video lecture and PowerPoint over Jaws as the antagonist to the characters, as the shark. This section, part 1 of your introduction, should be 3 to 4 sentences, 4 sentences max. You should be able to do this really quickly. So when we're talking about the summary of the basic plot of the film, only summarize it the way you would talk about a friend who has not seen it. It's about a shark that attacks a town. Second part of your introduction should be your thesis statement. Now, this is the most important part of your introduction and should be in the last sentence of your introduction. So, the assignment asked you to do the following. Describe how the shark acts as an antagonist in Jaws that creates conflicts and obstacles for 2 characters. Ideally, your paper will analyze the way the characters interact with the shark and how these interactions reflect the inner growth or lack thereof of 2 characters. So essentially, your thesis statement must address how the shark works as an antagonist for 2 characters in the film. You may choose any 2 characters that you wish, but please choose 2. For more information about how the shark plays the role of an antagonist to various characters in the film, please see the previous PowerPoint. Body paragraphs. So you should have 2 body paragraphs, 1 for each character you analyze in the paper. Even though you are analyzing different characters, the body paragraph should have 3 main parts for me to look at. These parts are the topic sentence, evidence, and your explanation. Topic sentence. The topic sentence should express the point you're going to prove with your evidence. You should always mention the director's name and the theme of the idea that is most important. So, for example, you should state how the shark is used by director Steven Spielberg to reveal the motivations, the desires, or the goals of a given character. Next, you should provide evidence. Just like critical review number 1 on the film Metropolis, Make sure that you introduce the scene, describe the scene, quote any dialogue, and then explain the scene. In your first paper as a class, most of you did very well at describing and analyzing what's important about the scene. So that's good. Keep that up. For this paper, however, it's important to remember that you should also connect that back to the thesis statement. So, few key things to remember. All right? No piece of evidence can exist on its own. No quote can exist on its own. You must introduce any quoted dialogue or introduce the scene you are describing. Don't forget to describe the actor in the scene. Since we're focusing on character motivations, one of the key things you will need to do is describe how an actor is portraying those emotions. So for instance, if you're going to choose to write about Quint, and you're going to use the U.S. Indianapolis scene, pay attention to how Robert Shaw, the actor, is presenting the motivation that Quint's desire is really for revenge. That these men he saw die, he's going to get revenge for them. And the person he's going to do, the way he's going to do that will be killing the shark. After introducing it, make sure you describe how this proves your thesis statement. So how does the scene you have chosen for the character, how does that scene help show the shark as an antagonist that is stopping the goals of the character? Explaining evidence, remember, when you explain evidence, you should always provide the context, what is happening in the movie at the time of your scene. You should explain, describe, or quote dialogue from the scene if need be, right? And you should explain what is important about your scene and how it connects to your thesis statement. Don't forget that all films, as we've discussed in class, can have more than one narrator, and that the camera is always a narrator. So if you are explaining something without any dialogue, make sure you explain how the camera is moving. Are we getting a close-up of a character's face to see how they are acting? Is there something important in the background? Finally, the conclusion. Right? Your conclusion, you should state your opinion about whether the shark, in your mind, is a true antagonist. Right? This is the only part of the paper where you may use the word I. All other parts of it, you should be analyzing what is seen in the film and presenting your evidence. When you get to the conclusion, and only in the conclusion, may you use the word I. One of the things that I'm really interested in you to answer and see how you can describe this in your conclusion is, can the shark be a true antagonist even though, as an animal, it doesn't have any personal animus against the people of Amity? So when we think of normal antagonists, we tend to think of people or things that have desires and motivations to stop our protagonist. In this case, though, the shark is just a shark. It's there to eat. As Hooper says in the film, it is a machine that eats, poops, and makes little baby sharks. So can something that only has that range of desires, if we can even say that, does that represent a true antagonist for the film? Your conclusion should be around 3 to 4 sentences. Finally, just in setting up the paper, make sure that you have cut out any extra or unnecessary spaces between your paragraphs or your title. So if we look at this example of a student paper, all the parts with the green OK are perfectly spaced, double-spaced paragraphs. All the parts with red represent spaces that should have been cut when the student submitted the paper. So you can see that there are 2 spaces between the title, and there's a space in between the first and second paragraph. These spaces should have been cut by the student. Now, I know sometimes students may think that they can pad out the length of a paper, but remember, in our case, it's word count. So if you give me a 15-page paper with 400 words, you still have not met the word count, so there's no need to try and stretch to get to 2 to 3 pages. Finally, one more time, here's the outline for critical review number 2. In your introduction, make sure you discuss the director, make sure you discuss the characters and the actors who played them, and give a brief summary of the plot. This should be 3 to 4 sentences. In the last sentence of the introduction, make sure you state your thesis statement. Which 2 characters are you going to analyze, and how does the shark represent an antagonist to those characters? Remember that you should have 2 body paragraphs, These body paragraphs should have topic, a topic sentence, evidence, and explanation. Finally, make sure you have a conclusion. The conclusion is the only part of the paper where we use the word I, and it should state your opinion about the shark as an antagonist. And finally, make sure you have a works cited page. Once again, the works cited page is there underneath. I will see you at our next virtual class hangout to discuss any questions you may have. Good luck!